Welcome to Making Sense of the World. I'm Christina Engela, and I'm here to hold your hand as we cut through the lies and debunk the bullshit some people believe about so-called satanic symbols in pop culture and media. You've probably seen some lists like these in Christian books or magazines, or even circulating on social media, claiming that ordinary symbols, logos, symbols from other religions, or teenage graffiti hide secret and sinister occult meanings and supposedly indicate that someone is involved in Satanism. This sort of propaganda fuels the satanic panic conspiracy theory nonsense that's still been knocking around even in 2025. Now, laypersons may be fooled by these things, but to pagans, Satanists, and occultists, these lists are packed with errors and misrepresentations, and these are used to deliberately spread misinformation to stoke fear and hostility against marginalized religions and their practitioners. It's all part of spiritual warfare, right? Come on, let's unpack the truth behind these myths.
No, don't speak of the devil. He wants you to. He wants you to. No, don't speak of the devil, and you do too. And you do too.
Hello everyone and welcome. This is the second presentation video that I was asked to do by my supervising professor, which she wanted to present to one of her classes in religious studies. In the first one, I examined the satanic panic in South Africa, some of the personalities that drove it, and the infamous SAPS Occult-Related Crimes Unit, the ORC, and unpicked the patchwork of lies that crept into South African scholarly understanding of Satanism, paganism, and the occult. You might want to watch that one again, and also pay attention in this one, because I have a pretty good idea that there are going to be some interesting questions relating to the subject of Satanism in your upcoming exam. Let's just say a little birdie told me. There's a link underneath this video if you want to. The sponsor of this video is, just kidding, there is no sponsor, and since this channel is not monetized and probably never will be, I'd really appreciate a little love in the like and subscribe department. And if you'd like to help me keep making these videos, there are links to my PayPal and my Ko-fi or coffee. I prefer saying coffee. You doesn't like coffee? Come on. Down there as well. With that out of the way, let's get to it. The subject of this video is Okay, let's get the boring stuff out of the way first. The scope of this presentation will include the introduction, the symbols typically misassociated with Satanism. That is going to be the focus of the whole thing. The purpose of misassociating symbols with Satanism. And then the conclusion. And the Q&A, well, that won't include me in this case because I'm not there. Now, what are these lists that we're going to be talking about? Well, let's start with where you normally find them. Usually they're featured in Christian books, magazine articles, social media shares, etc., circulated by Christian organizations or activists. It's presented as factual. They're generally accepted at face value, uncritically. They present satanic panic or moral panic material. In other words, it's material that basically fosters fear of the occult, fear of the Satanists that are hiding in the bushes as a conspiracy theory, that sort of thing, that sort of mindset. They all show similar lists of symbols claimed to be indicators of Satanism or as used by Satanists or as having sinister, secret, or hidden meanings in Satanism. This also engenders a level of paranoia in people, in the audience. Because I can remember back in the 80s, parents were very watchful about what their children were watching and what games they were playing and what they were writing in their books and in their diaries and the little what doodles and scribbles they were making in their textbooks and graffiti they were putting on their book bags or backpacks, just in case they might get involved in Satanism. They provide explanations of the uses or significance of these symbols within Satanism which do not reflect accuracy, sincerity, or honesty in relation to scholarly or historical sources. So what I'm trying to say there is, what they say doesn't match up with the reality or with the historicity or the accuracy in terms of what these symbols really mean, or what they mean in religious Satanism or within paganism or other occult religions or their source religions. They are propaganda devices intended to connect Satanism, paganism, other religions to harmful religious practices or occult-related crime and sinister conspiracy theories. Now we come to another important part. Since we're discussing these warnings containing lists of symbols in the context of the South African Satanic Panic, where did they come from? Well, like most of the moral panic things we deal with these days, it's as American as apple pie. It started in the USA, appearing in hysterical Christian evangelicalist books, warning about satanic and occult symbols influencing American youth and society. And it predates the 20th century Satanic Panic. And these lists can be found in a wave of Christian evangelical publications from the 1970s and 1980s. Related influential works in that regard include the Jack Chick series of little cartoons. A lot of churches, especially, I can remember that some of the churches I went to when I was young and Christian, and now I'm just a lot of the churches had these, and they were distributed around Sunday schools especially. Published in the 1970s, which was a widely distributed comic-style tract warning about occult and satanic influence in youth culture and music. The narrative of a threatening criminal underground conspiracy theory form of Satanism popularized during the latest Satanic Panic. Now, here are some more modern examples. The list is promulgated in pseudo-scientific SRA promoting American books like, and here we go, Mystery Mark of the New Age, Satanism, The Seduction of Americans' Youth by Bob Larson. Put a pin in that one, we'll come back to it just now. Then there's The Devil's Web, Who's Stalking Your Children for Satan by Pat Pulling and Kay Cawthon. Now, each of these devotes pages to misrepresenting various symbols taken out of context as satanic or as used by Satanists and presenting them in a negative, frightening even sense, sinister sense, conspiracy theory sense. But most of the time, they have nothing at all to do with Satanism, or not in the way that they're misrepresented to have anything to do with Satanism. In one example, The Devil's Web has a 6-page appendix listing symbols as associated with Satanism. Now, you should notice that these books all predate the start of the actual Satanic Panic in the USA itself, and in other places, but that all of these sort of books, which form a genre, if you like, that I call Satanic Panic or Moral Panic literature, together with others, formed the basis of panics that would come along later in various countries around the world, including Canada, the USA, the UK, Australia, and in South Africa. Now, underneath these, I've listed some of the better-known South African knockoffs of these previous books. Many of the exact same symbols and their descriptions also appear in these later South African counterparts. If you were to go through some of them, if you can find them, you can find them online in various different places where you can download them. You can compare them to each other. You can note the similarity in layout, design, and titles. For example, the one that I told you to put the pin in, Bob Larson's book, compare that to John and Helen Gardner's book, Satanism, The Seduction of South Africa's Youth, is very similar to the same book by Bob Larson, Satanism, The Seduction of America's Youth, in terms of layout, content, and message, and title. Now, to continue, a general feature of anti-Satanist activist ASA material, and we spoke about anti-Satanist activism in my previous video. A general feature of that is that it presents collections of symbols which are claimed to be satanic in nature or origin, having a sinister, hidden, or secret meaning to Satanists, or as used by Satanists within Satanism. Probably repeating myself there, but that is the central part of this presentation. These symbols are circulated and reshared using the same or closely similar descriptions with occasional deviations from one successive source to another. Now, this is very similar in principle to the Satanic calendar, which I also did a previous video on that you probably haven't seen yet. I'll put a link down in the description below for that as well. These symbols are or were propagated and disseminated in articles, books, magazines, and official materials, warning their intended audiences that their use is inherently connected to Satanism, witchcraft, or devil worship. This is especially true in South Africa, where the ORC or the SAPS official website used to have these lists, and also they were replicated in the Servamus magazine, the official magazine of the police community. These warnings are almost exclusively presented in a religious context, in other words, from a perspective of Christian evangelism, and warnings against Satanism in theological settings. The symbols in question are often described as found left at various crime scenes by alleged Satanists and are used to create a connection between Satanism and crime. Now, in the previous video that you guys saw, I included a clip showing Kobus Jonker actually saying that you cannot be a Satanist without being criminal or involved in criminality, where he actually connected his belief that Satanism and crime are one and the same thing, or non-exclusive. You cannot be one without the other. Now, what is wrong with these symbols or the way they're represented? Presentation of these symbols in such material follows a predictable trend. They either have no association at all with authentic religious Satanism as a new religious movement, or may originate within Satanism or other religious settings, but in either case are accompanied by descriptions or explanations that are either partly or completely incorrect, or intentionally framed to mislead or engender negative connotations in their audience towards Satanists, pagans, witches, other occultists, or adherents of other religions. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to show you a list of symbols most commonly featured in these sort of materials as examined in the following books. And that would be Occultisme by C.H. Prinsloo and P.J. Rousseau from 1983, also well before the actual start of the Satanic Panic. Youth and Satanism Exposed by Neville Goldman and our very own Kobus Jonker from 1990. Satanism, the Seduction of South Africa's Youth by John and Helen Gardner, also from 1990. Magte van die Duisternis, that's Forces of Darkness about Satanism in the Republic of South Africa, also from 1990 by Evert Haysamen, who is a theologian. Then there's Satanisme, die Reg om te weet, Satanism, the Right to Know by Rodney Steele from 1991. Satanisme, Realiteit, that's Satanism, a Reality by Kobus Jonker, 1991. Satanism Exposed, also by Kobus Jonker, 1992. And then the Servamus, Drugs and Occult-Related Crime, The Facts, The Answer, Special Community Edition from 2000. So just to give you some examples of how these things are presented, or these lists are presented in these books, how they're introduced. In Youth and Satanism Exposed by Neville Goldman and Kobus Jonker, the writers add the following preface. They say, note how many of these are being used by young people without understanding what they are drawing or sticking onto things. This warning is repeated verbatim in Satanism Exposed by Kobus Jonker in 1992. Then in Satanisme Realiteit, Kobus Jonker again warns that many signs and symbols that appear innocent to the parent have a satanic origin, and many have originated in occult movements. That's now translated from Afrikaans. Rodney Steele, in his book, presents these signs as follows. Many young people walk around with these signs on their school bags, pencil cases, or clothes without knowing what the signs mean. The parents see it as a fad that will pass, and the children think they are in. Also translated by yours truly. So I want to add a few notes about the sources and how they present these symbols before we get into the symbols. These sources present the symbols, their names, descriptions, origins, uses, context, or ritual meanings as accurate and as used within Satanism, but they do not present them with a level of accuracy that implies the sincerity, honesty, or integrity expected of an authoritative, knowledgeable, or scholarly source. And you'll see why when we get into it. You'll see why I'm saying that. They do not rely upon scholarly references or citations of scholarly documents, but rather rely on theological adversarial material, similar earlier or contemporary unscholarly works in moral panic literature to corroborate their own works. They cross-reference to each other. They would rather draw on sources from within the echo chamber than refer to scholarly works, because scholarly works do not actually corroborate what they're saying. They rely on their standing in religious circles or other credentials, such as law enforcement in the case of examples like Jonker, to persuade their audiences of their activist message to evade having to provide substantive proof. Because what's the first thing that happens these days? We all have a phone in our pockets. Somebody says something and you want to verify it, you just take it out and you Google it. Back in the 80s and 90s, it wasn't so simple. You would have to go to a library to go and look it up, and then endure strange looks when you were asking for books on Satanism and the occult. But it's an evasive tactic. So now we're going to get into the symbols that are typically misassociated with Satanism or misrepresented in their connection or relation to Satanism. I'm going to be introducing what these sources say about these symbols first, and then I'm going to be debunking them or correcting them afterwards. And let's get into this. Okay, I've taken 23 symbols from these lists to cover in this video. I'll be marking each of the 85 statements about these symbols with one of the following to rate them. A check mark to indicate they got something right. One of these things to show they only got it partway right or partway wrong. A blue question mark that stands for what the actual were you thinking? Yeah, you know what I mean. Lastly, a red X to indicate where they got it wrong. I'll probably play a cute buzzer noise to go with it. So let's start with two of the most commonly misrepresented symbols, pentagrams and pentacles. Now let's look at what the sources say. A pentagram without an enclosing circle is a pentacle. These are referred to as a pentagram or inverted pentagram. This is a symbol of evil and black magic. Use of either is directly tied to Satanism. It's used as an indicator of devil worship. When inverted, the three lower points signify denial of the Holy Trinity. Let's verify that. We come to the fact-checking part. A pentagram without an enclosing circle representing protection is a pentagram. A pentagram with an enclosing circle is a pentacle. These are referred to as pentagrams or pentacles regardless of orientation. The difference is determined by the use of the terms left-hand path or right-hand path. So no. The pentagram or pentacle is used by numerous religions, including Baha'i, Wicca, Neo-Paganism, Judaism, Islam, Mormonism, East Asian religions, and Christianity. In Christianity, it signifies the 5 wounds of Jesus. In right-hand path or RHP orientation, it emphasizes the importance of spirituality or transcendence over material existence. In left-hand path orientation, it emphasizes the importance of material gratification and self-deification over spiritual pursuits. So they're actual mirror opposites. The Christian Holy Trinity has no significance within religious Satanism, so much for it having anything to do with the Holy Trinity. If there's anything about satanic panic material that irritates the crap out of me, it's the ignorance out there about this symbol. And experts in occult religions or occult systems and practice would or should know these differences and know these nuances about these symbols. Then we come to another symbol often misunderstood by anti-Satanist activists and even some Satanists. The inverted cross. And what the sources say about it? It's called an inverted cross or upside down cross, often referred to as the Southern Cross. symbolizes the mockery and rejection of Christ or the Christian cross. It is a blasphemy of the Christian cross. Actually, I think the Pope would disagree with him there. This is the Petrine cross, or the cross of St. Peter. It is not known as the Southern Cross. That name refers to a constellation visible in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's a star formation. It's got nothing to do with that. And this is a Christian symbol. Now, why do these supposed Christian experts not know that this is a Christian symbol? I'd like to mention also that a lot of Satanists also wear the inverted cross or the Petrine cross. Many of them seem to think that it actually means rejection of Christ, and it's more shock value than anything else. But I don't think they actually realize what the meaning of this symbol is. Let me explain. When St. Peter was executed by the Romans, he supposedly requested not to be crucified the same way that Christ was crucified. He asked to be crucified upside down because he didn't feel worthy of dying the same way that Christ was executed. So the central message of the symbol of the cross inverted means, I am not worthy, I am unworthy. And if you look at Satanist or Satanic ideology or scripture or symbology, the inverted cross or the Petrine cross does not fit with that. So what you're actually doing is you're walking around wearing a symbol on your neck saying, I'm not worthy. Food for thought. Then we come to the 666 number of the beast. What the source says, it represents the number of the great beast of the Antichrist from Revelations. It represents the mark of the beast. It is Satan's number. F is the sixth letter of the alphabet, so triple F is also used by Satanists. Actually, the number 666 or triple F has significance in Christian eschatology as the number of the beast and nowhere else. 666 or triple F has no significance in Satanism. In Jewish Kabbalah, 666 sometimes represents the physical world and its perfection or strength, and a messianic potential related to the physical world fulfilling its divine purpose. In Thelema, the number 666 has positive meaning, strength, enlightenment, and spiritual power, but Thelema has no connection to Satanism, and neither does Kabbalah. The Ankh. What the source says, it represents 666, the number of the beast. It's supposed to have great magical power and significance in Satanism. It is a sex symbol in Satanism. Actually, it is an ancient Egyptian religious symbol associated with several gods in their pantheon and also with fertility, life, and creation. Claims that the Ankh is used in satanic rites have no basis in fact. And the symbol has no relevance in religious Satanism whatsoever, not as a sex symbol or otherwise. The thaumaturgic triangle. What the source says, it's used for magical purposes such as spell casting and demon summoning. Marks the spot where summoned demons appear. Represents fire or male virility when pointing up, female sex and water when pointing down. Usually painted on the floor during a coven meeting. Actually, it is a neutral magical tool used in ceremonial magic to restrict summoned spirits within it for protection of the practitioner. It plays no part in spellcasting. That may be true. That is the orientation of the triangle in alchemy and Hinduism, but not in religious Satanism. The usual place for this device is on the floor. Satanists don't use the term coven. It's called the Magic Triangle of Solomon, the Seal of Solomon, and it's used in Gosha, basically demonology. It has no relevance in religious Satanism as a symbol, but some Satanists use ceremonial magic, of which it forms a part. Ceremonial magic is a magical system used by various different religions. Then we come to the magic circle. What they say? Used for magical purposes such as spellcasting and demon summoning. Symbolizes eternity. It has no beginning and no end. Yes, that sounds very threatening. Demonic power is supposedly kept within and danger outside it. When used in satanic rituals, it is normally 9 feet in diameter. Actually, it is a neutral magical tool used in ceremonial magic, used by numerous religions for protection of the practitioner and attendees. It has no specific relevance to Satanism or demon summoning, so they got that part way right. It has no relevance in religious Satanism as a symbol for eternity or anything else. Keeping demonic power within the circle, with the practitioner and attendees, makes no kind of sense. That's what the triangle is for. Yeah, there's a what the f moment over there. Protection circle size is relevant to the purpose and what is contained within. In other words, the numbers of attendees. If you have more people, you have a bigger circle. If you have less people, you have a smaller circle. Unless a ritual specifically requires a specific size circle. These devices are only relevant to religious Satanists who put any stock in this sort of thing. Not everybody believes in magic. Then we come to the cross of confusion. What the source says, it was first used by the Romans. It questions the validity or truth of Christianity. It is a secret satanic symbol. Actually, it did not exist before 1972, and it's a stylized artistic logo created by artist Bill Gorlick as album art for the band The Blue Oyster Cult. It was used on several of their albums. It was derived from the symbol of Saturn and the symbol of the Greek titan Kronos, with no original satanic or anti-Christian intent. It has nothing to do with any religion. It has no anti-Christian meaning and has no significance within religious Satanism. Then we come to the anarchy sign. What the source says represents the overthrow of all law, natural and man-made. Represents the Antichrist. It is a secret satanic symbol. And actually, it's a political symbol dating from its use by a Spanish workers' union in the 1860s. It symbolizes political anarchy. It's an ideology of freedom from oppressive leadership. And it was popular in the same context with rock bands of the 1970s. It has nothing to do with any religion, no anti-Christian meaning, no significance within Satanism. Then we come to the one called the Church of Satan. And what the source says, the symbol is called the Church of Satan. It is the symbol of the Church of Satan. It is the symbol of Anton LaVey's first Church of Satan. And it appears in the Satanic Bible. Adolescents are using it in graffiti, marking their notebooks and school bags with it. Actually, it is not called the Church of Satan. It is the Satanic Cross, or Leviathan's Cross. It is not the symbol or logo of the Church of Satan. Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan. The first Church of Satan was founded by his daughter Zena Schreck. This symbol was not the logo for that either. It does indeed appear in the Satanic Bible.
Bam!
Graffiti exemplifies symbolic Satanism and teenage rebellion, not religious Satan. It is the alchemical symbol for black sulfur and represents human autonomy, self-determination, rejecting religious dogma in favor of individual freedom and intellectual independence, and Anton LaVey's wicked sense of humor. Then we come to the swastika, the broken cross, or the Hakenkreuz. What the sources say. The symbol is also known as the sun wheel. Represents movement away from the Godhead. Denotes disharmony with nature. It has become a modern symbol of evil. It is a Nazi symbol, and it is used by Nazis. It is used by Satanists. Actually, there are many different types of sun wheel or sun cross. There is no mainstream religious or cultural tradition associating the swastika with movement away from the Godhead in the context of its ancient sacred meaning. It may denote disharmony or inversion of natural cosmic order, but this is an oversimplification of a very nuanced topic. In other words, they've condensed it into one little sentence in a way that suits them. True, but it has still got no connection to Satanism, and it has zero significance within authentic religious Satanism. Bah! Then we come to the lightning bolt, the so-called Satanic S. What the sources say: it is called the Satanic S. It marks the fall of Satan from heaven to earth. The runic single S was used by the Nazi SS. It is a secret satanic symbol. And actually, it is called a lightning bolt or lightning bolt S. The stylized lightning bolt S originated with the band Kiss in the 1970s. There was no meaning other than visual appeal. They thought it looked cool. The Nazi runic iteration is referred to as the Sieg rune or victory rune. The SS used 2 Sieg runes together in pairs, not one. Single runes were used for other purposes, for example, the Hitler Youth movement. The lightning bolt has no religious meaning within Satanism. It was a symbol used in numerous cultures and religions, ancient and modern. And lastly, if there are any occult groups masquerading as Satanists out there using this symbol, you're not looking at authentic Satanists at all, but Nazis. And this claim typically features the Nazi iteration or design of the Sieg rune, rather than the lightning bolt S, to associate Satanism with Nazism, and that to me indicates deliberate intent to associate Satanism and Nazism with each other. Then we come to the triquetra. The source says it represents 666, the number of the beast. Once again, unto the breach, dear friends. One method of symbolizing the mark of the beast is 3 interlocking circles. Wouldn't it need 6? Since when does a circle denote 2? Anyway, actually, triquetras are used in various forms in several different cultures and religions, including various pagan and neo-pagan parts. Christianity co-opted it in the 7th century CE to symbolize the Holy Trinity, and that's about 1,300 years ago. Christian use began in Ireland and Scotland with the Celts. It was used in Christian church literature, furniture, decorations, illuminations, and architecture. It has no significance whatever in religious Satanism. Basically, it's another Christian symbol that they're referring to as a satanic symbol. Then we come to the hexagram. What they say about that: it is known as the Jewish Star of David and the Seal of Solomon. It is the symbol of Judaism, often referred to as a hexagram. One of the most powerful symbols in Satanism. Actually, it is indeed known as the Star of David, but there are 72 seals of Solomon, each one representing a demonic spirit, and only a few feature a hexagram. It is the symbol first adopted by Jews in Europe during the 1600s to identify themselves as Jewish. Bah! The hexagram is a geometric 6-pointed star shape, but is not enclosed by a circle. It has no significance within religious Satanism. Sometimes in South Africa it is referred to by the Afrikanerism hexagram, implying witchcraft, as hex in Afrikaans means witch. Then we come to the black goat or sabbatic goat. What the source says: it is the symbol of Satanism. It is the logo of the Church of Satan. It is called the black goat, also called the sabbatic goat. Actually, it is not the symbol of Satanism. There are numerous symbols of Satanism. For example, the sigil of Lucifer, that's the one on the top left above there, or the sigil of Baphomet, the top right one. It is not the logo of the Church of Satan either. It forms part of the logo of the Church of Satan. It is known as the sigil of Baphomet, top right above. The term the black goat usually applies to images featuring an actual black goat or goat head. The term the sabbatic goat has been used interchangeably to describe various different designs, including the Baphomet statue. Then we come to the sigil of Baphomet. What the source says? It is the universal symbol of Satanism. It is also called the black goat or sabbatic goat. It represents the demon Baphomet. It is used by witches to symbolize the horned god. Actually, it is not universal among all groups or individuals who identify as Satanists. It is the official registered insignia of the Church of Satan. The term the black goat usually applies to images featuring an actual black goat or goat head, not just this one, as before. Not a representation of a literal demonic deity. And Baphomet is not the name of a demon, not in the Gosha or anywhere else. And the horned god is a Celtic feature of pagan and neo-pagan religion and has nothing at all to do with Satanism or the figure of Satan or Lucifer or the devil. And the circle around the sigil contains 5 Hebrew letters that spell out the name Leviathan. Then we come to Baphomet and the sabbatic goat. What the sources say? It was worshipped by the Knights Templar and by Satanists at the Black Mass. Is a popular sketch of the devil. Actually, the name Baphomet first appeared in a Crusader letter from 1098 CE. The association of Baphomet with the devil is a misconception rooted in Christian polemic and popular culture. Baphomet was how Europeans of the period interpreted the name of Muhammad. The Knights Templar were accused under torture of worshipping an idol called Baphomet in the early 14th century. There is no evidence that such an idol existed or that the Templars practiced such worship. The Black Mass is a Christian myth adopted by Anton LaVey. This design was created in 1856 by Eliphas Levi to represent numerous principles, including the reconciliation of opposites and dualities in the universe, and not the devil. The figure is said to represent the union of male and female elements, symbolized by the goat's androgynous form, showing harmony between masculine and feminine principles. The balancing of light and dark, good and evil, spiritual and material, depicted by the statue's gestures and symbolic objects like the torch on its head. The goat's horns and pentagram reinforce its association with esoteric knowledge and occult wisdom. The statue is often referred to as a symbol of knowledge, enlightenment, and the transcendence of conventional religious morality. Then we come to the peace sign, also called the witch's foot, the crow's foot, and the sign of the broken Jew. What the source says, it was designed by the Roman Emperor Nero, called the Cross of Nero. It was a symbol of the Antichrist, used by all satanic churches, used to mock the crucifixion of Jesus, represents the breaking of the Christian cross and ties with Christianity and the defeat of Christianity, which each Satanist demonstrates at their initiation into Satanism. Actually, it did not exist before 1958 and was not in any way tied to ancient Rome or Nero. Designed by Gerald Holtham for the British Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament, or CND, combines the semaphore signals for the letters N and D for nuclear disarmament. It has nothing at all to do with Satanism. And the idea that the peace symbol represents a broken cross or defeat of Christianity, unsupported by historical evidence. These claims were circulated by some Christian groups. Primary and enduring meaning remains peace and nuclear disarmament. I wonder who would think that would be a bad thing. Then we come to the Labrys, or double-headed axe. What the sources say. It's called the upside-down axe or double-bladed axe. It's represented justice to the Romans, used in the death ritual. Satanists use it upside down to represent anti-justice or injustice. Actually, it is called a labrys. Its primary Roman meaning was as an emblem of authority, governance, and law, rather than spiritual or gender symbolism. There are no literal death rituals in Satanism, least of all any featuring a labrys. It became popular with the modern feminist movement as a feminist political symbol. It has nothing to do with religious Satanism in any orientation. In ancient Rome, the labrys or double-headed axe was not a central symbol, but it did have limited significance, mainly through its inclusion in the depictions of fasces, a bundle of rods often bound with an axe at the center, representing magisterial power and authority. The labrys itself originates from earlier cultures such as Minoan and Greek civilizations, where it was a symbol of divine power, goddess worship, and female authority. In the Roman context, however, the labrys was most often seen within the fasces carried by lictors, signifying the magistrate's ability to administer corporal and capital punishment. When present, the double-headed axe or labrys in fasces indicated the highest powers of magistracy, especially outside the city of Rome, where it symbolized the right of execution. The labrys did not have the same direct association with matriarchy, goddess worship, or feminine divinity in Roman culture as it did in Minoan or Greek traditions. Its primary Roman meaning was as an emblem of authority, governance, and law, rather than spiritual or gender symbolism. It became popular within the modern feminist movement as a feminist political symbol, and we know how popular feminism is with Christian zealots, don't we? Then we come to the yin-yang symbol. What the sources say, it is a sign of the New Age movement. Satanists have captured this symbol. It represents a merger of masculine and feminine spirit, Satan's model being for the New Age. It represents the amalgamation of opposites, black and white, female and male, Satan and God. And actually, the symbol originated within Taoism, later adopted by the New Age movement. It has similar meanings in both. It has no significance within religious Satanism. It represents the philosophy of harmony and balance of complementary forces that define and transform each other continuously, and that everything in existence contains some element of its opposite, which is represented by the dots. Then we come to the Wedjat, or all-seeing eye, or the third eye. What the sources say, it is the all-seeing eye of Lucifer. It symbolizes the third eye, which occultists believe is located on the forehead. It is used by Satanists. Actually, it is an ancient Egyptian symbol, and its proper name is the Ujat, sometimes spelled Wedjat, Ujat, or Wadjet. Ujat literally means the one that is sound or whole. It represents the healed or restored eye of the god Horus, who lost his eye in a mythic battle with the god Set and had it miraculously restored by the god Thoth. In ancient Egyptian religion, it represented healing, protection, and wholeness. It has no relevance within religious Satanism. Then we come to the scarab beetle. What the sources say. It's a design based on the dung beetle, and this is the ancient Egyptian symbol of reincarnation. It is associated with the demon Beelzebub, lord of the flies, and it's associated with flies, decay, and filth. It was co-opted by Satanists as a symbol of occult power, spiritual transformation, or even immortality that opposes Christian teaching. It is pagan and spiritually harmful. Actually, it is associated with rebirth and protection, especially in funerary contexts, but it is not connected to reincarnation as understood in Eastern religions. No connection between the Egyptian scarab and Beelzebub in ancient sources. This is a modern speculative interpretation based likely on both being linked to insects. In other words, it looks like. Beelzebub is a name derived from the Philistine god Baal-zebub, which means Lord of the Flies, and which comes from a different culture altogether. It has no relevance within religious Satanism. They said it was pagan and spiritually harmful. Is it any more spiritually harmful than Christianity? And how much harm can a picture of a beetle do when we come to black mass indicators? What the source says. Both symbols can be used to indicate a black mass. The black mass is supposed to be a satanic practice parodying the Catholic mass. During a black mass, holy items are defiled and forbidden activities performed, like sacrificing newborn unbaptized infants, sex orgies, and reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards. Actually, prior to 1966 and until Neve, the black mass was a Christian myth. No actual serious example existed before he created a ritual for Satanism, which did not exist before then either. Why would authentic religious Satanists waste time and energy defiling holy items or reciting the Lord's Prayer backwards? Religious Satanism does not condone human sacrifice, murder, or animal abuse. They must be confusing Satanists with devil worshippers, or, in other words, reverse Christians or pseudo-Satanists. So then we come to the Satanic moon, also called Diana and Lucifer. What the sources say: it represents Satan and the pagan moon goddess Diana, with Lucifer as the morning star. Found in white witchcraft and Satanism. And actually, in some pagan paths such as Wicca, the moon represents the divine feminine, the waxing moon represents youth, in other words the maiden, the full moon represents motherhood, in other words the mother, the waning moon represents age and wisdom, in other words the crone. Diana was a Roman moon goddess. Lucifer was never a god in antiquity, but their description of a light bearer, in other words, like for example the planet Venus, which was associated by Satan with Christians. Satan is not a deity recognized within paganism. The waning or waxing moon, or moon and star, do not have any significance in religious Satanism, theistic or atheistic. The moon and star together are not used in paganism, but are a symbol used in Islam. So now we come to the summary. What do the misrepresentations of these symbols as related to Satanism infer or imply? A lack of personal or intimate knowledge or experience of the originators with Satanism or paganism or occult religions on a scholarly level. Not understanding the differences between the different types of religious Satanism and those and Christianity-created pseudo-Satanism, and their relative beliefs, practices, and symbols, etc. And for that matter, not even understanding or knowing enough about Christian symbols to be able to use their judgment wisely. A lack of credibility on the part of these originators. Few, if any, scholarly citations, outright distortions, lies and misrepresentations, or at best ambiguous statements. A reliance on their audience's unfamiliarity and or ignorance about Satanism, occult practices, other religions, and the symbols they misrepresent as satanic. That to me indicates a deliberate intention to misinform their audiences by means of creating false connections between Satanism and red flags such as crime, right-wing or Nazi ideologies, antisocial behavior, harmful actions, etc. through misrepresentation. It demonstrates an intent to use disinformation to incite or strengthen hostility towards perceived Satanists who dissent from evangelicalist Christianity. Then we come to the interesting part. Tally the scores. How many did these experts in Satanism get right? How many partway right or wrong? How many what the f***? And how many did they get completely wrong? Let's see the results. They got 5 right. They got 13 partway right. They got 1 what the f***. They got 67 wrong. Out of 86 statements on 23 symbols. If that was my line of work, I'd be looking for another line of work. Then we come to the purpose of misassociating symbols within Satanism. Now, I've never heard of any one of these individual sources reacting positively or at all to to criticism or acknowledging attempts by people with first-hand knowledge about Satanism, paganism, or occult practices to correct their representations. Why do they do this? Well, ignorance of the actual facts about Satanism or other religions, ancient cultures, etc. A deliberate attempt to deceive their audiences. Both likelihoods undermine the claimed expertise, motives, and sincerity of these perceived experts on Satanism. If their intent isn't to deceive their audience, why don't they engage with critics? Why don't they make changes? Why don't they correct their errors? And if they really are experts, why do they demonstrate ignorance and make such mistakes in the first place? The presentation of these symbols in context of disinformation about Satanism is a feature of Satanic Panic, and its purpose is to form part of the ASA or anti-Satanist activism toolkit of disinformation intended to sow suspicion, distrust, and reactionary hostility in sympathetic receptive audiences towards perceived dissent or deviation from traditional or societal religious norms. See a nail sticking out? You hammer it. Hammer it flat. That's the mindset. After all of that, I can't think of a better, more appropriate summary than this. Don't believe everything you hear. Remember P.T. Barnum's famous saying, there's one born every minute? Don't be that one. If someone tries to convince you of something, take a moment to do your own research, speak with people who have direct experience, or consult scholarly papers or books, including materials produced by the groups being scapegoated, targeted, or demonized. Throughout our history, as long as humanity is plagued by exclusivist religions, systems, or ideologies, there will be those in privileged positions working to protect that privileged position, often by undermining the efforts of those trying to attain equality with them. When you get the chance to question experts like these who have built their careers promoting and marketing themselves on their religious standing and theological expertise, whether they present themselves as authorities through scholarship, personal experience, or religious doctrine, ask questions. This is usually the best way to uncover the facts and distinguish truth from disinformation. Challenge disinformation and those who spread it. But as always, be curious enough to learn more and to know more, even about contentious subjects. Go on, be that curious kid who always asks, why? And don't just accept because I said so as an answer. And that's really the best advice I can offer. Well, that was a really long video. I don't mind telling you that I had to stop part of the way in the first attempt because the battery on my mic went flat and I didn't notice. So I had 3/4 of an hour of me miming and no sound. But anyway, so that's all water under the bridge. Now, in the upcoming exam that you're going to be facing, there are going to be a few questions on Satanism. And you should pay attention to the following. Everything I said about atheistic Satanism, everything I said about theistic Satanism. Don't worry, you can thank me later. Future me here, just dropping by to give you an actual hint. If I were you, I'd watch my previous video again and pay close attention to the forms of Satanism and Pseudo-Satanism and how they relate to moral panics. And while you're at it, I think you should also review the parts about the occult-related crimes unit so that you understand the relationship between the ORC and Satanism. Seriously though, if you just watch my videos again, or if you've been making notes, I think you'll have it nailed. You'll have it nailed. I just wanted to add, it's been a real pleasure being asked to present even in video form, and I'm really grateful to the professor for asking me, and to you for your time and your attention. I didn't hear anybody snoring loud enough to wake me. It's been a privilege to share my knowledge with you, and I hope you learned something from it. You're welcome to get in touch with me if you like. If any of you are interested in studying these things further, you're welcome to reach out to me or to Prof. Lee. She's got my contact details, and we can pick it up online. And I'd love to meet you guys when I'm in Cape Town again. So I'm off to go and edit this whole thing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Please, feel free to post comments or questions. I'm Christina Engela. Thank you for watching.
Actually, that's not Satanism. You're just playing dress up with superstition. Learn the signs, get your facts right. Stop the fear and turn on the light. Actually, that's not Satanism. You're fooling no one with your ignorance and schism. Actually, that's not Satanism. You're just playing dress up with superstition. Learn the signs, get your facts right. Stop